First, let me, as I said earlier, express my gratitude to His Excellency, the Prime Minister, for the renewed confidence during the last government reshuffle on January 12th, 2024. As you know, the more trust is renewed, the higher the expectations, and you are more bound to succeed in the mission entrusted to you. And you are driven to carry it out so as not to betray the trust placed in you. That is the first point. The second point is when we talk about performance contracts, these are activities on the ground. And as you know, we are in a particular context marked by the security crisis. And if we manage to carry out activities, especially in the justice sector, it means there has been an improvement in the security situation on the ground. So allow me to pay tribute to the men and women who are on the battlefields, so that we, at the level of ministerial departments, can support this momentum of reclaiming our territory. Returning, of course, to the performance contract, as you know, at the very beginning of each year, we try to look ahead by assigning to each ministerial department and the minister in charge of that department a certain number of activities to be carried out, which are summarized in objectives and outputs. Regarding the Ministry of Justice and Human Rights, in charge of relations with institutions, I would say the former ministry, now simply the Ministry of Justice, we had 6 objectives, 12 actions, and 36 outputs. So, at the finish line on December 31st, for 5 of the objectives, we show a completion rate of 100% and 63% for 1 of the objectives. Thus, an overall achievement of 99.09%. Concretely, what does that mean? Because often figures can be misleading. It means that in terms of strengthening the processing of judicial cases, is, for example, the empty file operation, during which we were able to process and bring to trial more than 8,743 cases, which far exceeds the annual average. To say that on the criminal level, in all jurisdictions of Burkina, it was an average of 7,000 cases judged per year, and those 8,743 were done in 55 days. So if you add the annual average to that, you will find yourself around 15,000 or 16,000. That is to say, in 1 year, we have done the work of clearing a 3-year backlog. But that is not enough because, as you can see, it means that we have come a very long way. Despite all these figures, we must not fall into triumphalism because we must continue to work so that access to justice for the people of Burkina Faso is truly a real success. We will be very happy when we see that 99.09% of Burkinabe people who go to court are actually satisfied with the service and the quality of service offered to them, beyond the figure achieved, which truly honors and recognizes the dedicated men and women who tirelessly run and operate the Ministry of Justice, and who, despite facing all sorts of challenges, obstacles, and difficulties, actually manage, through their hard work and commitment, to carry out and fulfill the important missions and responsibilities that have been assigned to them. But there is still reason to be satisfied, to realize that what was asked of you has been achieved. But I say it clearly, this satisfaction must not hide the reality, must not hide the challenges that lie ahead of us. In terms of the fight against impunity for violent crimes, embezzlement, and corruption, more than 394 cases were actually tried and sentences handed down in 2025, which resulted in more than 10 billion, between 10 and 15 billion in cash, as well as in real estate and vehicles that were seized so that the state could recover its rights. Also, during the year 2025, the National Agency for the Management of Seized and Confiscated Assets, which, as you know, are the proceeds of offenses and embezzlement, had a goal of mobilizing 5 billion. It raised nearly 5,300 million, which of course was deposited in the treasury. During the year 2025, as you have seen and as we have previously discussed, there were also significant reforms and important changes that took place. Reforms aimed first at adapting our rules to our socio-cultural context, because the criticism most often leveled at our justice system and our law is that it is an imported law, an imported justice that we often do not understand, and we are just spectators. You go to court, you are judged, you watch, as His Excellency said earlier, as if you were watching a movie because you understand nothing, and at the end they tell you, well, you have to go to the other side. So the effort was made to truly adapt our legal rules and our procedural rules to our socio-cultural context. And that is why you saw the law on the Code of Criminal Procedure, which established alternative mechanisms to prosecution and imprisonment, such as mediation. Anyone who knows mediation in African society knows that it is truly the palaver tree. If you commit an offense right now, before there was no solution, even if you agreed to repair the consequences, you would inevitably have to go to prison. Today, that is no longer the case. As soon as you reach an agreement with the civil party and you agree to repair the consequences of the offense, the judicial police can report to the prosecutor and the case is closed. If you continue and you appear before the prosecutor and he looks at the facts of what you've done and you're not really a hardened criminal, you cannot disturb public order, he can offer you community service. If you accept at this level as well, the case is finished. If you are a company, a legal entity, and you have, for example, committed fraud and you are caught, we will calculate all the duties you owe to the treasury, to the state budget, and we will add the fine and the case is closed. So these are some of the mechanisms. I just took this to give you an example. The code has more than 1,000 articles. So every article is an innovation to adapt our law to our context. If you take, for example, the Code of Procedure, the Personal and Family Code that was adopted, to make it conform to our customs and traditions from the birth of the child, through their marriage until their death, and even after their death, their succession, everything is governed in a way that brings us much closer to our customs and traditions. I'll give you the example of the family name, which can now be passed down in accordance with our customs and traditions. We should no longer bear family names that have no meaning. You have the recognition of customary marriages. You have the possibility for fathers and mothers to enter into the son's succession. It's a whole set of innovations. Take the law on judicial organization, which has made it possible today to move towards flagrante delicto crimes. You just followed the case of Madame Compaoré, the lady who was murdered. Before, we would have been forced to go through a preliminary investigation. And the investigation could take maybe 10 years. After the investigation, you have to go to the Court of Appeal, to the indictment chamber. It will take 15 years before seeing the judgment. You see that the case has already been scheduled for trial, and the parties have agreed to postpone it just until January 20th, because otherwise it would have already been judged. You followed the case of the mistreated Talibé. He has already been judged, and the decision has been handed down. It's to speed things up. Here, if you're caught, you're in the middle of killing someone. The system didn't allow us to go and judge you quickly. So there is a set of reforms that have taken place, of course, at the ministry level. I might mention the community service I brought up earlier, where we allow people who are sentenced, if you're sentenced to 12 months and you choose to do community service for 1 month, your sentence is reduced by 3 months. So basically, if you do 3 months of community service, working for society, instead of getting up in the morning and sitting in prison until evening just to be fed, you work for 3 months and it's equivalent to 12 months of imprisonment. At the same time, you are resocialized and at the same time, you contribute to the country's development efforts. And now I'll move on to prison production, for which we had planned in our performance contract 150 tons. And in the end, we have reached 350 tons of produce. Of course, as I was saying earlier, this is thanks to the support of the Ministry of Agriculture, because we had planned for 150 tons, but with the support we received, we reached 350 tons. At the ministry level per year, the food requirements to support the inmates of the prison facilities is 150 tons. So that means we produce 2.5 times what is needed to feed the prison facilities. And the state budget that used to go towards that will now necessarily be used for something else. And you also have, regarding human rights, a lot of training that has been conducted for our volunteers for the defense of the homeland, as you know, who are deployed in the field of operations alongside our armed forces and our internal security forces. They must be given the necessary basics so that they can find the right balance between the armed response and the necessity of also protecting human rights, so as not to create frustrations that could be fertile ground for fueling terrorism. Regarding citizenship and civic duty, more than 2 million people have been sensitized on civic duty and citizenship as part of the National Days of Patriotic Engagement. You have also followed the regional conferences that were organized across the 13 former regions to foster a sense of patriotism among Burkinabe people, to build this model Burkina Faso that the head of state so earnestly desires, so that together we can understand that we are at a historic moment for our country and that we must unite to fight terrorism. That, in short, is what the 99.09% evaluated by His Excellency the Prime Minister represents. I reiterate, in any case, my encouragement to the staff, and I salute the government's solidarity that has allowed us to reach this level. If you look at the digitalization of records, criminal records, and nationality certificates, it was done through interministerial cooperation. As of December 31st, we had over 500,000 online requests processed. And to say that in terms of outlook, 2026 is going to be a year of finalizing the reforms that I just mentioned to you earlier. It will be a year of implementing these reforms so that the Burkinabe people can truly feel that something has changed. In terms of justice, in terms of the protection of human rights, in terms of relations with institutions, and a strategic plan has already been adopted and is being implemented for